Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into a fascinating collection of wisdom.
Hmm.
It's called The Teachings of Shri Vallabhacharya.
Right.
Basically, this book pulls together the key writings of Shri Vallabhacharya. He was a really significant figure back in the late 15th, early 16th century.
Yeah, 1479 to 1531, roughly.
Uh,
Founder of Prishti Marg.
exactly, the Path of Grace. And he was a big voice in Shuddhadvaita Vedanta.
Pure non-dualism, yeah. That idea that everything is ultimately Brahman, the divine. Like, waves are still water.
Good analogy. So this collection, it has his famous 16 works and other stuff. And our mission today, what we want to do is kind of pull out the core of his teachings for you
Yeah, give you a solid handle on his philosophy.
without getting totally lost in like super academic language.
Right. And what's interesting is the text really tries to give you the whole picture of this path of grace.
How so?
Well, it looks at it from the philosophy side, the big ideas,
Okay.
but also through the devotional practices, how people actually live it.
Got it. Showing how the ideas translate into like real spiritual experience.
Exactly.
And the text brings up this idea, siddhant.
Ah, yes. Sit down.
It's not just any old philosophy, right? It means like the true philosophy.
Yeah, the one that guides you to perfection. Sita is perfection, and anta is the end or goal.
So the ultimate goal. And for Vallabhacharya, the siddhant, it's all about Shri Krishna.
Completely.
Mm.
Attaining Shri Krishna. And it's packed with devotional insights, practical advice, inspiration.
Which kind of highlights that the goal isn't just thinking about stuff, it's experiencing perfection.
Right. And his way there is very much through bhakti, devotion, that intense love.
Yeah, and the text uses this beautiful image. Devotion is like nurturing this tiny seed inside you,
Mhm.
and it grows like into a wishing tree, and the fruit is this supreme, unconditional love.
It's a lovely metaphor.
I-
And it's not just a feeling, right? It leads to a state where the beloved
Shri Krishna.
actually appears
Yes.
in your heart all through creation with his own joy.
Wow. Okay, so let's dive into the very start of the text. It's called Auspicious Beginning.
Right. In this section, it's important to know, these are verses meant for like morning recitation.
Ah, okay. Like setting the tone for the day.
Exactly. Focusing on the key figures, the core principles of the Pushti Marg right away.
So we see homage paid first to Shri Vallabhacharya himself,
Mm-hmm.
then his son, Shri Gusainji, and his 7 sons. Quite a lineage focus.
Definitely. It shows the importance of the spiritual lineage.
Yeah.
The prayer also mentions the main forms of Krishna worshipped.
Right.
The 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
A super important text for Krishna's life stories.
Crucial. And also Vallabhacharya's own gurus, Sri Yamanaji and Sri Jitaraja. It maps out the key devotional elements.
Yeah, you see the foundations,
Mhm.
the scripture, the lineage, the sacred places, the gurus.
It's all there. Sets the stage.
Okay, the first verse is quite striking. I bow again and again to my Acharya, Shri Vallabhacharya. The dust from his lotus feet removes all anxieties.
Powerful image, isn't it?
It really is. Even the dust has this power. What's the quick takeaway here?
Well, the core insight, I think, is this immense reverence, seeing Vallabhacharya as like a direct line to the divine.
Okay.
And bowing signifies that total surrender, that faith in his power to help.
Makes sense. Then verse 2 carries on. I always bow to the feet of Shri Vallabhacharya's son, Shri Vithalnathji. With his grace, all the woes of the world are removed.
So the grace extends through the lineage.
Yeah, it's not just the founder.
Exactly. It reinforces that idea of a living tradition where blessings flow down through the teachers.
Then verse 3 kind of shifts focus a bit. I bow to the guru who has applied the coal of knowledge to my eyes and has thus removed the darkness of ignorance.
Ah, the kohl.
Yeah, what is that exactly?
It's like a traditional eyeliner or ointment used to improve vision. So here it's a metaphor.
But clarity, insight.
Exactly. The guru dispels spiritual ignorance, brings that light of understanding. It's a common theme. Ignorance is the root of suffering.
Right. Verse 4 turns to Shri Krishna directly. I bow to Shri Krishna, an ocean of potency served by thousands of Lakshmis, all engaged in his Leela. Leela, the divine play, right?
Mm-hmm. The divine play.
Mm-hmm.
Goes on. They all rest within the limitless heart that contains the milky and nectarine ocean of Leela.
Wow, that paints such a grand picture, an ocean of potency.
Yeah, it emphasizes Krishna's supreme power, his divine playfulness, that cosmic dance of joy.
And his heart containing this ocean, like he's the source of it all.
Exactly, the source and sustainer of all divine activity.
Okay, verse 5 goes back to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto. It breaks it down. 4 chapters on Shri Krishna's birth, 4 on his Kumar Leela, 3 on his Yavan Leela. It lists all these sections.
It's like a roadmap to the key parts of Krishna's life in that text.
Why break it down so specifically, do you think?
Well, by outlining these stages, birth, youth, his different divine activities, his virtues, it stresses how comprehensive this scripture is.
Okay.
It tells the devotee, embrace the whole story, understand all these facets of Krishna.
Got it. Verse 6 then lists different forms of Krishna worshipped in this tradition. Shri Gavarpanath, the lotus feet of Nati Priyaji, Shri Matharadish, and so on. Lots of names.
Yeah, it's not just one static image of Krishna. This invokes the main forms, the svarups, worshipped in the Pushti Marg.
Highlighting his multifaceted nature.
Exactly. Each name, each form, connects to a different aspect of his being or a specific Leela, a story.
And the 7th verse kind of wraps it all up. Remember Shri Vallabhacharya, his son Shri Vitalnachi, and his 7 sons. It lists the whole lineage again. Their lineages, Shri Yamanaji, their own guru, the blessed mountain Giriraj, as well as their own Krishna. Remember the one you serve.
That emphasis on remembrance, it's so central to bhakti, to devotional practice.
Calling your awareness.
Constantly. And that last bit, remember your own Krishna, the one you serve. That makes it deeply personal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really brings it home to the individual's connection. Okay, so that's the auspicious start. Then the text describes divine forms, starting with Shri Krishna's form.
Right. And this bit is actually from the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, the Vinagita, the song of Krishna's flute.
Oh, okay. So how is he described?
Oh, it's very poetic. He's got a peacock feather, earrings, a garland of forest flowers, a shining gold shawl.
Sounds beautiful.
And he's called the Swami's choice, the choice of his divine consorts, their lord, their husband, appearing as the actor husband.
Actor husband. Interesting phrase. And the flute. He fills the holes of his flute with nectar.
Beautiful imagery.
His praises are sung as he enters Vrindavan, surrounded by cowherd friends, his lotus feet creating splendor. Just reading it feels evocative.
Absolutely. The imagery is full of symbolism, the peacock feather, the flowers, his connection to nature, the gold shawl, his divine radiance.
And the nectar-filled flute.
That's like a metaphor for the sweetness, the bliss he spreads through his music, his presence.
Okay. Then, right after Krishna's form, we get Shri Vallabhacharya's form. This reveals his inner Leela form, his divine essence.
Yes, and it's quite unique. It describes how Krishna first manifested this incredibly lovely form in a loving feminine mood from his own heart.
Okay.
And then Shri Swamini, his primary consort, Radha, manifested the all-attractive male form of Krishna from her heart.
Wow. And these 2 forms
entered into their beloved Vallabhacharya.
So he becomes this combination, a blend of both divine forms and their bliss.
Exactly. Nectar-filled, it says. And the text tells us to always contemplate this amazing threefold form.
That's profound. The guru embodying both masculine and feminine divine aspects. What does that say about the guru's role here?
It points to this incredibly intimate, almost mystical connection. The guru isn't just teaching stuff.
Right.
He's an embodiment of the divine principles, a direct channel for grace and bliss.
Makes sense. Next up is Shri Vitalnachi's form, Vallabhacharya's son, and the description is super specific.
Yeah, it paints a very clear picture. Sitting in a lovely bower at sunset, golden vessels around him, sacred thread, cotton dhoti, a shawl. His face shining like a lotus. He's doing pranayama, controlling his breath, fingers on his nose.
Even details like pearl earrings, a musk tilak on his forehead, his hair.
It's a very serene, detailed portrait.
Why so much detail, do you think?
It feels like it's designed to inspire reverence, to give a clear focal point for meditation.
I know, like a snapshot.
Exactly. All those details, posture, adornments, they build this image of spiritual discipline, but also divine presence in a human form. It evokes peace, encourages contemplation.
Okay. Now we get to the best recitation. This is a set of 108 names of Shri Vallabhacharya, written by his son.
By Shri Vitalnachi.
And it says these names hold the essence of the path of grace, keys to Krishna's kingdom.
That's the idea. The core insight here is just the immense significance given to Vallabhacharya. Reciting these names isn't just like reading a list.
It's a practice.
A powerful devotional practice.
Yeah.
A way to connect directly with his spiritual power, his grace.
Okay, so the first verse says, his manifested form, Vallabhacharya's form as Supreme Brahman, isn't about material stuff, but full of divine virtues.
Right. Reinforces that idea we saw before. He's not just human, he embodies the divine. His real essence is pure spiritual qualities.
Verse 2 talks about the Kali Yuga, this difficult age we're in.
The age of struggle.
It says, even if people's vision is clouded now, the greatness of the Lord's form through Vallabhacharya isn't diminished. That sounds comforting.
It really is. It's reassurance for devotees, especially when things feel tough or confusing.
Like the divine presence and guidance are still there, still potent.
Exactly. Accessible through him.
Verse 3 is very direct. When Shri Krishna, was full of compassion and wanted to manifest his own greatness through his speech, his own face appeared as Shri Vallabhacharya.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful statement about his divine origin.
It really elevates him, doesn't it? A direct manifestation of Krishna's compassion and speech.
Underscores the authority of his teachings.
Verse 4 admits his teachings might seem hard to grasp.
Which they can be, philosophically.
But reciting these 108 names makes them easier to understand and removes impurities, like a key.
Yeah, it highlights the practical side of devotion. Even if the philosophy feels complex, just reciting the names with love
Can bring clarity.
Yeah.
And purification.
Yes, the promise. It cleanses spiritual obstacles.
Verse 5 gives some background. The speaker is Vitalnathji, son of the fire Rishi Vallabhacharya.
Fire Rishi. Nice symbolic title for his power, his brilliance.
And the names are in a specific meter, Anustap, and it says Krishna's compassion is the seed, and his face is the deity of the recitation. What do those details add?
Well, the meter shows it's a careful composition. Connecting it to Krishna's compassion and face just deepens that divine link, emphasizes the profound effect of saying the names.
Got it. Verse 6 says these names are useful in bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. Reciting them removes obstructions.
Clears the path.
And grants the reward of the nectar of Shri Krishna's lips. That's a beautiful image for grace.
It really is. It directly connects the practice to devotion and promises that tangible spiritual reward, experiencing divine love, symbolized by that nectar.
Okay, now verses 7 through 14 list specific attributes of Vallabhacharya. Instead of each one, what are the main themes popping up here?
Let's see. Consistently, he's shown as full of bliss and grace. That comes up a lot.
Okay.
He reveals deep meanings, especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He clears up doubts, defeats illusion.
Uplifts devotees.
Right. Initiates souls with compassion. He's brilliant, generous, powerful, pure, understands Krishna deeply, and his glance delights devotees.
So a powerful, compassionate, knowledgeable guide.
Absolutely. That's the picture.
Then verses 15 to 20 continue this. What stands out there?
Here, it talks about his worship, how it's joyful but maybe difficult for non-devotees.
Interesting.
Yeah, and how he churns the nectar of the Bhagavatam, makes it accessible.
Yeah.
His grace gives liberated devotion. He teaches renouncing everything else for Krishna.
Right, devotion over maybe more standard Vedic practices.
Exactly. And it mentions him speaking of Krishna's 1,000 names too.
Okay, and the last block, verses 21 to 35. What's the final message about these 108 names?
These really drive home his role in uplifting followers, setting up his family lineage for devotion. He's even called the husband of devoted souls.
Wow.
He removes confusion, teaches this distinct path of refuge, gets absorbed in Krishna's stories, fulfills wishes.
Lives in devotees' hearts, fills them with bliss.
Yes, all of that. Enjoyer of ceremonies, his fame grows through his commentaries. He's adorned divinely. The dust from his feet brings bliss.
And reciting the names brings faith and grace.
Ultimately, yeah. That's the final point. Reciting these names is for attaining Shri Krishna.
Yeah.
It's a complete testament to who he is in this tradition.
Okay, powerful stuff. Let's move to the 16 works themselves. First one. In praise of Shri Yamuna, the sacred river.
Yes, Shri Yamunaji.
And the text says she's deeply connected to Krishna, and it's through her grace you can even meet Krishna.
That's right. She's not just water here. She's revered as divine, a source of spiritual power. She actually increases a devotee's love for Krishna.
And she purifies,
Right.
removes obstacles.
Removes the burdens of this age, elevates devotees, makes them dear to Krishna, basically transforms them for his loving service.
Okay, the verses themselves sound lovely. Verse 1 calls her the giver of divine powers, fragrant banks, beloved of the gopis, beautiful like Krishna himself.
Yeah, that first verse sets the stage immediately. Her divine status, her intimacy with Krishna, and his dearest devotees. Comparing her beauty to Krishna's really underscores her sacredness.
Verse 2 talks about her origin from Lord Narayana's heart, flowing from the Kalindi mountain, increasing love from Mukunda for Krishna.
Linking her to Narayana elevates her status right away. Her source is divine. And mentioning the mountain roots her in sacred geography. Her power is devotional.
Verse 3 says she came to earth for purification, serves Krishna, and uses this imagery of birds serving her. Her waves are arms, the sand is bangles.
That personification makes her feel like a living, divine presence,
Right.
deeply connected to nature, active in Krishna's world.
Verses 4 and 5 mention Shiva praising her dark color, her banks in Mathura providing shelter, and the Ganges merging with her, making her even more beloved to Krishna.
Right. It shows she's revered even by other gods, connects her to Krishna's sacred town, Mathura, and that confluence with Ganga enhances her power. She can give all powers, make people like Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune.
Wow. Then verses 6, 7, 8 tell this amazing story. Her waters aren't touched by Yama, god of death.
Yeah, protection from death itself.
Worshippers become beloved like the gopis. Being near her transforms your body, helps devotion. Her grace surpasses even Ganga's.
It elevates her incredibly high, and she's called co-wife of Lakshmi. Praising her with Hari and Lakshmi brings liberation.
And that image, her body made of sweat beads from Krishna's love clay with the gopis. Very intimate.
Incredibly intimate. It links her very essence to that highest divine love.
And the last verse sums it up. Reciting this hymn removes impurities, instills love for Krishna, brings devotional powers, transforms devotees. A powerful piece.
Absolutely. It captures the profound benefits: purification, love, power, and transformation into the nature of Krishna's own devotees.
Okay, the second work is Instructions for Spiritual Children, or Vallabhacharya, written for a disciple, a guide for novices. Explains 4 ways to liberation through seva and devotion. Let's unpack this.
Right. This one's really about giving beginners a kind of spiritual roadmap. Outlines different paths, then points towards what Vallabhacharya sees as the best one.
Which is devotion to Krishna.
Ultimately, yes.
It starts by mentioning the 4 traditional pursuits of life: dharma, wealth, desire, liberation.
The Purusharthas, yeah. Foundational framework in Indian thought.
And Pohl says these are considered by the world and by God. So it's acknowledging that context first.
Exactly. Before narrowing the focus down to liberation, moksha is the ultimate goal.
And the Vedas, it says, cover divine reality and these 4 pursuits for people living in the world according to God's teachings.
So the Vedas are comprehensive. But Vallabhacharya is now focusing in for the novices.
Right. He says the text will focus on liberation and notes there are 2 schools teaching self-effort.
Right.
And 2 requiring God's assistance. That's a key distinction he's making.
Crucial. Setting up that comparison.
Yeah.
Paths of individual effort versus paths relying on divine grace.
The self-effort ones mentioned are yoga and Sankhya, producing liberation through renunciation, external in Sankhya, internal in yoga. Can you briefly touch on those?
Sure. Sankhya is about understanding the difference between consciousness and matter, detaching from matter. Yoga uses disciplines physical, mental, to control the mind and senses. Both really emphasize what you do to get free.
Okay. Then the other 2 rely on help from Vishnu or Shiva for liberation, recognized in the Vedas, worshipped by Brahmins. But Brahma isn't mentioned for liberation.
Interesting exclusion, yeah.
Yeah.
It suggests a specific view within this tradition about who grants liberation. Vishnu and Shiva are often seen that way. Brahma, the creator, less so.
Vishnu the sustainer, Shiva the destroyer. Both can grant enjoyment and liberation.
Yes, they have power over both worldly pleasure and spiritual freedom. Multifaceted.
But it says Shiva grants enjoyment most easily, while Vishnu bestows liberation. Different specialties, kind of.
Exactly. A nuanced view of their roles for different goals.
And followers are advised to stick to their chosen path's rewards, basically. Don't cause trouble. Practice devotion. Liberation comes easily via Vishnu. Enjoyment via Shiva. It sounds like a call for respecting different paths.
Yeah, promotes harmony within that broader Vedic world, mutual respect.
Then it talks about dedicating yourself to God, taking shelter, following Dharma, and says confusion won't arise if you understand this. What's the key to avoiding confusion?
The key seems to be surrender. Give yourself over to the divine will. Live righteously, Dharma, under God's protection. That focus brings clarity.
It also mentions these paths relying on God's help are easier than self-effort paths, especially since the path of grace isn't fully manifest yet, kind of hinting at his own path being even better.
Subtly, yeah. It sets the stage for introducing the path of grace as maybe even more direct, more accessible than relying on Vishnu or Shiva in the traditional ways.
So the Vallabhacharya ends by saying, understand these paths, you can reach your goals. But devotion to Shri Krishna is the most excellent means.
Right. Even in this intro guide, the focus clearly lands on Krishna. It gently guides the novice towards that path as the best way.
Makes sense. Okay, the third work, the Pearl Necklace Teachings. For another disciple, this one reveals the nature of Krishna's seva service and the relationship between manifest divinity, unmanifest Brahman, and the world. Sounds more philosophical.
Definitely. This gets into some core metaphysical ideas in his system.
It starts by saying attaining being happens when your consciousness is threaded into Krishna, and that removes worldly pains. Nice image, threaded in.
Yeah, suggests a really deep integral connection, right? You're self-woven into the divine. Naturally, worldly anxieties drop away then.
Then it states flat out, Shri Krishna is supreme Brahman, truth, consciousness, bliss. And he has two forms.
Right. One distinct from everything else, the personal God with qualities.
Okay.
And the other, the imperishable, formless source, ultimate reality.
And these aren't separate.
No, two aspects of the same supreme being, the personal and the absolute.
The teaching admits there are lots of contradictory opinions out there about Brahman in the world.
Which there were, and are.
Before giving its view, why mention the contradictions?
I think to position his ideas in that wider debate, to say, look, it's confusing out there, here's a clear, consistent alternative.
Okay. Then it uses the Ganges River analogy to explain the world's dual nature.
Yeah, the Ganges is water, physical stuff.
Right.
But it's also a sacred pilgrimage site. It has a higher spiritual meaning. Following the rules around it brings liberation.
So the world is like that, material, but with an underlying divine reality.
That's the idea. The analogy makes it relatable.
Then it has a third form of the Ganges. Sometimes devotees see the goddess Ganga herself, distinct from the water.
Right. That brings in the more personal, divine aspect you can experience through devotion. She's linked to the water, but still distinct.
Leading to the main point, the Ganges water is like the visible creation, and the goddess is like the supreme blissful Krishna.
Exactly. Helps you see how the world, which seems separate and material, is essentially a manifestation of that blissful Krishna, like the water expresses the goddess.
Okay. For creation, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are the controllers, but the presiding deity over them is Hari, Shri Krishna himself.
Yeah, clarifies the Trimurti's roles, but firmly puts Krishna above them. He's the ultimate authority.
And for worldly desires, go to Brahma. But your inner self is Krishna, full of perfect joy.
Gives practical advice, right deity for the right need, but emphasizes your true inner self is already connected to Krishna, the source of real joy.
Then it talks about focusing your mind on Krishna while understanding everything is Brahman, which leads to realizing your soul is Brahman. Sounds like knowledge and devotion working together.
Yes, integrating both. The intellectual grasp all is Brahman with that loving focus on Krishna. That's the path to realizing your own divine nature.
Using the Ganges again, people on the banks who see Krishna within themselves are free, unlike those just worshiping the river but still attached to the water.
Right. Inner realization trumps mere outer ritual. Seeing the divine in you is key.
Interestingly, it says those blissfully contemplating Krishna often run into difficulties in worldly stuff.
Yeah, it suggests maybe that deep focus on the divine leads to a kind of detachment from worldly ambitions.
So you might face material challenges.
Potentially. It's a possible trade-off.
But then it contrasts this. Those who worship Krishna amidst difficulties, their worldly obstacles get obliterated.
Yes. Highlights the protective, transformative power of devotion. Even in adversity, if you're connected, obstacles vanish. Life fills with spiritual joy.
Followers of the lawful path improve by the Ganges, studying the Bhagavatam. Knowing grace rules the blessed path, bringing grace back in.
Acknowledges the value of traditional practices, sure, but ultimately says the guiding principle on the devotional path is divine grace.
And the pearl necklace ends saying, both paths, knowledge and devotion, can reach the goal, but loving devotion is superior to knowledge.
That's a clear statement. Positions bhakti, loving devotion, as the highest, most effective way in his view.
Okay, next teaching. The paths of grace, mundane flow, and lawful limitations. Describes different kinds of beings. Even though everything's Brahman, souls, paths, rewards are unique, like a map of spiritual types.
Exactly. If everything's Brahman, why all the variety? He explains that diversity is inherent in the divine manifestation. Different categories of souls, different trajectories.
So those on these three paths, grace, mundane flow, lawful limitations, have distinct souls, bodies, actions, rewards. Difference even within the oneness.
Right. Addresses that potential confusion.
The text promises to explain the differences clearly.
Yeah. Emphasizes why understanding these distinctions matters for navigating your own path.
It references the Bhagavad Gita, the godly and ungodly souls. Ungodly follow worldly flow. Vedas set up lawful limitations.
Anchors as categories in Scripture. provides that basis.
And Krishna's words from the Gita are used. Only certain souls are true devotees. Grace-filled souls are distinct from the other two types.
Sets them apart. Suggests this special category, particularly receptive to grace, following a path different from worldly life or traditional Vedic duty.
But then it says the sutras clarify these paths, and Vedic texts support all three being part of devotion, so they're related.
Yeah, distinct but maybe on a spectrum, all under the umbrella of devotion, catering to different inclinations or stages.
Yet, the Srutis Vedic revelations say the souls, bodies, actions of the three types are forever different, establishing the path of grace as separate.
Reinforces its uniqueness. Suggests it's not just an alternative approach, but a fundamentally distinct eternal category of spiritual existence.
Scriptures narrate this distinct nature, the different origins of these souls.
Highlights the scriptural backing for these inherent differences. Souls on the grace path have a unique origin, a unique relationship with God.
And here's the origin story. Worldly flow came from God's mere wish, lawful limitations from his speech, but the path of grace came from his bliss form.
Wow, that assigns a much higher, more intrinsic origin to the path of grace, doesn't it? Directly from his essential blissful nature, suggests its superiority.
Worldly desires lead to worldly rewards. Vedas describe these. Grace-filled fruit comes from the Lord's bliss form. Different desires, different rewards, never the same.
Underscores that qualitative difference. Fleeting worldly stuff versus the profound bliss from divine grace.
Krishna's Gita quote about casting cruel souls into demoniac wombs repeatedly, that's used to show worldly versus grace paths have different outcomes after rebirth.
Highlights their distinct karmic destinies. Grace path souls aren't subject to those same negative cycles.
So the teaching concludes, souls on the path of grace are definitely different, created for loving service of the blissful Lord.
That's the key takeaway on their nature and purpose. Intrinsically made for loving service and enjoyment of Krishna.
Okay, now we hit my conclusions on renunciation, addressing when and how much to renounce. And it says, in the path of grace, renunciation is for experiencing divine love. And you can even do it at home.
Yeah, that's a distinct perspective, maybe more accessible than traditional monastic renunciation. It's not necessarily about physical withdrawal.
To ease anxiety about it, the text looks at renunciation in devotion versus knowledge paths, but advises against it in the path of karma, action, especially now, in Kali Yuga. His thoughts align with attaining love. Why that distinction?
Sets the stage. In the path of grace, the focus is cultivating intense love. Renunciation should support that goal, not become some separate, potentially hindering thing, especially when you're active in the world today.
Giving up the world hoping for perfection just by listening to teachings isn't advised. You need spiritual assistance, a guru, for devotion.
Highlights the need for personal guidance. Just intellectual stuff or practices without a teacher. It might not be enough, could even mislead you.
Becoming a monk, formal renunciation, could create false pride, be contrary to devotion, lead to hypocrisy if desires remain. It's a warning.
Addresses that pitfall. Outward renunciation without inner detachment can lead to spiritual ego, fakeness, hinders real devotion.
And Hari won't enter the heart if the body's overcome with worldly desires. Renunciation won't work then. Inner purity is key.
Underscores that need for internal purification first. Devotion thrives when the heart's free from excessive attachment.
But in higher states of devotion, yearning for the beloved when separated, then renunciation is praised. Maybe changing clothes to break worldly ties, a different kind of renunciation.
Yeah, one that arises naturally from advanced devotion. Intense longing for God might manifest outwardly as detachment, flowing from that deep love.
For practice, the guru of lawful devotion is Kaudunya Rishi, but grace-filled gurus are the gopis of Vrindavan. Attaining perfect bhava, loving feeling, is by emulating those who've attained him.
Big difference there. Contrast traditional lineages following rules with the path of grace, which says, follow the Gopis example, they're the peak of selfless love. That's the way.
A devotee who's attained Krishna awareness might not be able to stay with the beloved due to physical limits. Worldly wisdom becomes an obstacle then. Sounds very advanced.
Describes that state of profound absorption. Transcending ordinary limits, conventional understanding, consumed by the divine presence.
A renunciate following the knowledge path might reach the highest material realm, Satyaloka. But for devotees, the beloved manifests from the heart and goes back there. Different destination.
Contrast the outcomes, yeah. Knowledge path might lead high up in the material cosmos. Devotion leads to that intimate, direct experience of God within your heart.
And the Lord himself is the reward for the devotee. He doesn't obstruct, he encourages the devotional experience. shows his loving nature.
Emphasizes that the goal is communion with the beloved Lord, who actively supports and encourages that relationship.
This love-based renunciation is rare, though. Path of knowledge has two types. One is to attain knowledge, takes ages, needs Vedic stuff. The other, relevant now, just creates regret and hypocrisy. So, path of knowledge renunciation is discouraged now. Why so strongly?
Vallabhacharya suggests it's too hard, not suited for Kali Yuga, more likely to lead to disillusionment, fakeness. Devotion offers a more direct, secure route now.
So what if Kali Yuga impurities creep into your devotion practice?
The answer is reassuring. In devotion, from the start, there can never be ultimate ruin. A devotee who renounces worldly things for deeper devotion won't face obstruction.
Wow, that's a strong assurance.
It gives a real sense of security. The path of love is inherently protected, even with today's challenges.
And if Hari himself won't impede a devotee like a mother refusing to feed her child, how could anything else? Great analogy.
Beautifully shows Krishna's unconditional love and support. No external obstacle can truly stop a devotee.
So the advice is, only renounce along the devotional path described. Renouncing for selfish reasons corrupts you. Pure, selfless devotion is the basis.
Concludes by reiterating that specific kind of renunciation, driven by selfless love for Krishna, warns against ego-driven renunciation.
Okay. Next up, Nirodha, bound by Hari. Explained not as controlling senses, but a state where you fall under God's control, forgetting everything but him, bound by love, possessed by his presence.
Yes, Nirodha is a key state here. Highly valued, that overwhelming, all-consuming love and absorption in Krishna, total surrender. And this idea of being bound by Hari, it taps into a universal desire, doesn't it? For complete surrender, the bliss of losing yourself in something higher.
The text longs for the joy the gopis and people of Braja felt.
Expresses that highest aspiration to feel the same ecstatic love they had with Krishna during his earthly time.
And longing for the feeling when Uddhava arrived in Vrindavan. Why that specific event?
Uddhava's visit is huge because he, this wise devotee, was just floored by the Gopas' unparalleled, selfless love for Krishna. Remembering that inspires devotees, sets the benchmark.
As devotional beings prevail, God showers mercy. Singing his bliss brings joy. It's reciprocal.
Exactly. Sincere devotion and praise evoke God's grace, bringing joy back to the devotee. A dynamic interaction.
Blessings of great devotees produce blissful praise. Their songs aren't worldly, like rich food versus stale, the power of authentic words.
Emphasizes the impact of associating with advanced devotees, how their heartfelt expressions nourish the soul deeply. Worldly stuff can't compare.
The pleasure from singing Govinda's praises is unknown even to those in self-realization. Elevates devotional bliss very high.
Underscores the unique, supreme joy of loving the personal God. Suggests it surpasses even the bliss of realizing the impersonal Brahman.
Yet when God sees the divine suffering of his souls, he becomes compassionate. Hari manifests from their hearts.
That shows his deep responsiveness, his compassion for genuine devotee suffering, his intimate connection to their hearts.
The bliss of his grace is rarer than the joy of his omnipresent form. When he dwells in the heart, hearing praise, he soaks them in bliss. Sounds immersive.
Emphasizes the special significance of that personal presence within the heart. Leads to unparalleled bliss through love and praise.
Those bound by Hari leave everything else, abide in constant joy, always singing his praises. Become full of truth, consciousness, bliss. That's Nirodha itself.
The very essence of it. Total absorption, transformation, filled with divine qualities.
The speaker says he's possessed by Krishna, has attained this state, explaining it for others ready to be bound. A personal testimony.
Sharing that deep experience of union, to inspire and guide others towards that same state.
Those Hari liberates from himself are absorbed into the worldly ocean, while those he binds to himself experience supreme joy. Contrasting fates.
Suggests different interactions. Being liberated from might mean a more detached state. Being bound to signifies that loving, joyful connection.
To improve corrupt senses obsessed with the world. Control everything with Krishna as the inner controller. Practical advice for daily life?
Emphasizes cultivating constant awareness of Krishna inside you, in everything you do, to purify senses, redirect them.
Blessed ones whose minds are full of Krishna's virtues have no worldly woes. Their joy is like Hari's.
Highlights the impact of meditating on, absorbing his divine qualities. Leads to inner peace, joy mirroring the divine bliss itself.
For them, Hari is merciful. Obstructions are impossible because his presence perfects everything.
Reinforces that idea. When God's grace is fully there, all spiritual obstacles just dissolve.
The power of the beloved's virtues creates distaste for worldliness. Touching Krishna's blissful essence while singing his glories means no more mundane suffering. The power of singing again.
Underscores the huge transformative potential of devotional music. Remembrance leads to lasting detachment from suffering, immersion in bliss.
Singing about Hari is superior to the path of knowledge. Free of jealousy, greed, devotees should always praise his virtues. Bhakti first.
Reiterates the preeminence of devotional practices, especially heartfelt singing, over intellectual paths for lasting fulfillment.
Advice. Always reflect on Hari's form with conviction. Touch him clearly, maybe through images or objects. Make every movement for him. Live fully dedicated.
Provides practical ways to cultivate constant connection, focused thought, physical interaction with sacred forms, dedicating all actions.
Sing and listen carefully. Have loving exchanges with your spouse if they have a child beloved to Krishna. Even mundane acts become useful in his seva, his service, integrating devotion everywhere.
Emphasizes the all-encompassing nature. Ordinary, everyday stuff done with love and awareness of Krishna becomes part of your spiritual practice.
If your actions aren't clearly connected to God, control them. Calls for self-awareness.
Encourages continuous self-reflection, refinement. Make sure your actions align with devotional goals.
And finally, no mantra, prayer, knowledge, holy place is superior to this state of Nirodha. It's the ultimate attainment here.
Concludes by asserting its supreme status, the highest, most fulfilling realization in the Pushti Marg.
Okay, we're near the end of this deep dive. Now, the rewards of seva, last of the 16 works from 1526, explains rewards and hindrances in service, seva, emphasizing abandoning anxiety.
Right, this last part gives practical guidance on approaching devotional service with the right mindset, understanding rewards, navigating obstacles without worry.
Divine reward is in God's hands. From the moment he gives the reward of his presence, spiritual desires are fulfilled. It's about the source of grace.
Underscores that fundamental point.
Yeah.
The highest reward is experiencing his presence, and that depends entirely on his grace.
Time isn't a factor for eligibility or rewards like transcendent love, absorption in Leela, getting a spiritual form. The rewards sound profound.
Highlights the timeless, transformative nature of selfless service. Ultimate rewards aren't bound by time, lead to deep spiritual change.
If God doesn't want to give a reward, there's no solution. You just assess the situation truthfully, emphasizes surrender.
Acknowledges it's the Lord's call. The devotee accepts this with understanding, doesn't get disheartened, trusts his timing.
There's divine enjoyment, the Krishna reward free from problems. Worldly enjoyment, hindrances should be abandoned. Knowing rewards and God-created hindrances are beyond your control. Calls for detachment.
Distinguishes pure, lasting divine bliss from fleeting, problematic, worldly pleasure. Prioritize the divine, recognize your limited control.
Worldly enjoyment is insignificant, destructive. Consider that. Renounce anxiety about God-created obstacles. See them as just part of mundane reality. Maintaining perspective.
Warns against worldly allurements distracting you. Encourages a detached, understanding view of any obstacles.
If anxiety, the first hindrance, arises, understand God isn't ready to give a reward yet. Worldly enjoyment is the third hindrance. These are beyond your control. Other thoughts are just confusion. Helps identify obstacles.
Provides a framework for recognizing common blocks in service. Advises against getting lost in worry or speculation about them.
Those belonging to him should consider this. Knowing Krishna doesn't delay his grace's reward, even if worldly stuff affects things. Grace is timely.
Offers reassurance. The Lord's grace comes at the right moment, despite worldly ups and downs.
And the final statement. Any distortion that might arise here is mere delusion. Trust the teachings.
Reinforces their validity. Dispel doubts, misunderstandings.
Okay, now for a pure devotional moment. The Song of Sweetness. A famous piece praising Krishna's sweetness everywhere.
Madhurashtakam. Beautiful outpouring of love, celebrating the total sweetness of Krishna in every single aspect.
Yeah, it's amazing. His lips are sweet, face sweet, eyes sweet, laugh sweet, heart sweet, gait sweet.
Speech sweet, character sweet, garment sweet. Even his fatigue is sweet.
Walk sweet, meandering sweet, flute sweet, hand sweet, feet sweet, dance sweet, friendship sweet.
Song sweet, yellow shawl sweet, enjoyment sweet, sleep sweet, form sweet, tilak sweet.
Doing sweet, crossing sweet, stealing sweet, those childhood pranks, right?
Exactly. Dalliance sweet, chewed beetle sweet, tranquility sweet.
Gunja bead necklace sweet, garland sweet, Yamuna river sweet, her waves sweet, water sweet, lotus sweet.
Gopis sweet, Leela sweet, union sweet, liberation sweet, desire sweet, control sweet.
Cowherd sweet, cow sweet, cane sweet, even creation and destruction are sweet. It's just total immersion in sweetness.
Complete immersion, everything touched by him becomes sweet. That word mathuram, sweet, just defines him.
Incredible. And finally, the last teachings. Written by Vallabhacharya, by the Ganges, right before he passed, before merging with his beloved, his parting words.
Yeah, these carry special weight, the distilled essence of his message at the very end.
And the core message seems incredibly clear. Believe in Shri Krishna, beloved of the gopis. That leads to spiritual accomplishment, freedom from concern. Faith is key.
Underscores the absolute centrality of faith in Krishna, the foundation for progress, for freedom from anxiety.
But there's a strong warning, too. If you ever turn away from Krishna, your body, mind, everything gets devoured by time's flow, stresses unwavering devotion.
Powerfully highlights the consequences of abandoning him. Time consumes everything else. Security is only in his refuge.
Instruction. Worship the Lord of the Gopis with every devotional feeling at all times. Continuous, heartfelt devotion.
Stresses that constant, deeply felt connection through all kinds of devotion, always.
And the final teaching. After leaving everything worldly, you become established in the form of liberation. True renunciation leads to freedom.
Echoes those earlier points. Detachment from the material, done with devotion, paves the way for ultimate liberation. Union with God.
Well, that was quite a journey, a real deep dive into the teachings of Shri Vallabhacharya. We've touched on the path of grace, the huge importance of devotion to Krishna, his view of the divine, the paths to liberation. Hopefully this gave everyone a good, concise handle on these really rich teachings.
Yeah, and it's interesting how these ideas, well, from a specific tradition, touch on universal themes. You know, love for the divine, reality's nature, the journey inward.
Definitely.
Vallabhacharya's focus on grace, that sweetness of devotion. It's a really unique and, I think, compelling perspective in the huge landscape of Indian thought.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to ponder, thinking about everything we cover. Which part of the path of grace really resonated most with you?
Good question.
Was it that sweetness of devotion, maybe the idea of Nirodha being bound by Hari, or finding renunciation right where you are in daily life?
Lots to think about.
Yeah, we'd encourage you to reflect on it, maybe look more into the Pushti Marg, or just contemplate these teachings further on your own path. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.